How's it going, folks? Welcome to the Salty Seaman, another military movie bullshit. Going to change it up a little bit. We're going way back in the past to a classic movie from the silent era, Battleship Potemkin. If you've never heard of this, don't feel bad if you're not a cinema snob or a film student. Probably no reason you never heard of this, but if you are, you're aware this is considered one of the revolutionary classics of the golden era from the turn of the century, from 1925. Revolutionary more than one way. It is a bit of Soviet propaganda. This is a movie about based on a real incident, the mutiny on a Tsar-era battleship, the Potemkin. It was a mutiny by the crew. This is before the Russian Revolution, before the coming of communism. This was done by Sergei Eisenstein. He's considered a master of movie and cinema from the day. A lot of the techniques and storytelling and filming and editing he used in here, basically transformed the way cinema is done. There's more remembered from that. But of course, for our purposes, we're going to look at it from the military point of view. Now that, of course, is some bullshit. Most sailors are just worried about, hey, what's our next Liberty port? When am I getting paid? Do I really got to do this fucking work? Blah, blah, blah. But remember, keep in mind, this is kind of a piece of Soviet propaganda. So, it's going to be told from the perspective of the Russian Revolution. Yes, the hammocks are historically accurate. Before we had racks, which I think they got rid of hammocks completely probably by the 50s. But before that, I believe they were transitioning. But historically, sailors of all different stripes and nationalities slept in hammocks. So remember that next time you active duty sailors bitch about your rack on the ship. This is how we used to sleep. Well, it's good to see shipboard food hasn't gotten any better since back then. I think that's about the equivalent of just put some hot sauce or A1 on it, it'll taste fine. Or, of course, the old standby, we get food that's rejected by prison that gets sent to us. Which is, I don't know if it's an urban legend or not. It's one of those things I heard about in the Navy so often and other parts of the military. I'm never actually sure if that's true, but I've heard it my entire career. But interesting parallels there. I'm kind of interested to know what kind of what kind of 3MC cards they have on those things. Now, interesting. I knew about the hammocks, but I've never seen the dinner, like the meal desks with the kind of swinging apparatuses they have there. I'm kind of interested to know, was that did our Navy have that kind of thing, or did we always have kind of stationary places to eat? Because I think that's a fairly interesting way of solving, ships rocking versus eating kind of a deal. Like ship like that probably rocked a lot. Now, the basic story here is they took the meat that's rotten and full of maggots, apparently cleaned it out with brine and used it in a soup. Hopefully, boiling it in a soup will assumingly take care of any, sickness you might get from it, I guess. And a bunch of the men are refusing to eat it. Instead are eating hardtack and whatnot. And the commanding officer gets mad about it and basically thinks it's insubordination, and men who refuse to eat it are threatened with execution, and that's where we get to the mutiny part of this movie. Now, here's where I've got to call some bullshit on it, and part of this is we don't know exactly what happened on the Potemkin. A lot of it is lost to history because of Soviet propaganda over the years. The actual incident, the exact details aren't quite known because of Lenin and his propaganda machine. I would, just in my experience with officers that are terrible people, I don't know if they would go that far to execute people. They're just like, well, if they don't want to fucking eat it, let them goddamn fucking starve or get sick, whatever. I don't think they would care enough to make a point out of it, but we'll never know the truth behind it. But for this story, they're saying this is leading up to the mutiny. And part of that, this is why they're going to the ship's store. They're getting snacks and geedunk and whatnot instead of eating the soup. Now, apparently there was a book, an attempt to make an historical account about the Potemkin incident written not too long ago that tries to ferret out exactly what happened, and they try to recreate best they can based on, what they know for historical and try to weed through the propaganda. After seeing this, I saw this for film class. I'm actually kind of interested in reading the book, and I really want to know what the closest to the real story is. Because it's what I see in the film. I just kind of feel it. There's more to it than what's being told here, in terms of how the mutiny happens. So yeah, I kind of feel it's bullshit, but I would like to know more. If anyone who's read it or know more about the incident, please feel free to talk about it in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And here we have the equivalent of the wardroom mess cranks here cleaning the nice dishes the officers have and getting pissed about it. Again, nice parallels. Some things just never change, and it doesn't even matter which country's navy you're in. Watching this, one of the things as a sailor I do is I'm trying to figure out how the uniforms work here. And I think I got it where the seamen, the non-petty officer, very junior guys, are in whites. The officers, of course, very visible. They have ties and the nice hats. And I think the petty officers and the guards are also in like the blue version of their version of the Cracker Jacks. And also one thing I really like, the translation at least refers to their version of the Master at Arms as the Black Guards, which is a fucking awesome name. Man, he really doesn't want anybody messing up that ceremonial P-way. So going to jump forward here a bit. If you haven't seen this before, the mutiny takes place. They were trying to execute those who didn't eat the soup. The ship turned on them. They were led by one guy. I can't pronounce the name. Bachuchenko, I think. They end up one of them dies, one of the mutineers, and the captain is killed, among a few other officers. Word gets back to Odessa, the town they're out of, and the word of revolution reaches them, at least according to this Soviet propaganda. And this leads us to the most famous scene in the movie here, the Odessa Steps, which from a cinematic viewpoint is a masterpiece and created basically the montage, which has changed a lot over time. But I'm going to want to focus on these soldiers marching in lockstep down the steps as they're basically executing people who are, basically trying to start an uprising here as just a poor military tactic. Why would you march in lockstep and not spread out and try to get better coverage fire? Because yes, you're armed and they are not, but if they chose to charge you as you're marching down steps, it'd be pretty easy to take them all out like a bunch of fucking bowling balls. So, poor military tactics on these soldiers here. And that's about all I'm going to do on this little movie. I thought it was an interesting little departure from the normal modern movie. A look at a cinema classic from the golden age. A little look into an old Navy and a foreign Navy. And just, part of my reaction to watching this for a class from a cinematic viewpoint and just my kind of empathy towards it and recognition as a sailor myself. I thought it was kind of interesting. So that's going to do it for the Salty Seaman. I apologize if my voice sounds a little rough. Just had a bachelor party for my best friend and former shipmate this weekend, and my voice still is not quite recovered. But that's all. It's going to do it for now. Next military movie bullshit will be something a lot more modern, probably something from the 80s, and probably touch on a few other things going on in the military world coming up the next couple weeks. So thanks for everyone for listening. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you freaks on the flip side. Peace.